Mansplaining, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back. Christian, how's it going? Welcome back.
Man, the time for common sense is needed now more than ever.
Boy, is it ever. Boy, is it ever. All right. So we got Christian was just picking me up on some of the recent events that we're going to address later on in the video. But for right now, let's discuss what we had planned, which was American hegemony and whether or not we are losing our grips on the levers of power. All right. So, as most of you know, America is the dominant force on Earth. The president is often referred to as the leader of the free world, not just leader of America, right? Because we basically control everything. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of things that contribute to our dominance. One of the probably the biggest one is military might. Hey, Anthony, welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. Say hi, guys, as you come in. And yeah, obviously we're the biggest and the strongest, right? We have the most military power, but it's not just that, right? And everything kind of flows together. So today we're going to talk about what items contributed to our incline to power and what items may contribute to our decline in power, which I hope does not ever happen. But
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. We can talk about the impact to the common man and whether we should, whether it's time. So a little history, if you mind, may I?
Yeah, help yourself.
So prior to World War II, the U.S. was a reluctant participant in world affairs, right? This kept us out of the Franco-Prussian Wars, the Crimean Wars, right? The African Wars, Sudan Wars, and things that we weren't involved. They weren't in our interest. Boom. And so we very reluctantly entered World War One, but immediately tried to retreat from the world stage, even though the president at that time felt like we should have more presence. The popular thing was to no League of Nations. Let's just stay away from whatever is going on. So World War II ushered in a new thing. So we reluctantly entered World War II after being attacked, and committed to that. And we committed fully, but at the end of World War II, right, we were faced with a new world, and one of that being a world with nuclear weapons, right? Now, we were clearly the most intact. We hadn't been bombed or attacked here in our homeland. So the wealthiest, the strongest, so the ones, right, with the Marshall Plan, we were rebuilding Europe. We were rebuilding our allies as well as our enemies, right? And there was no one else. And so nobody really resisted American hegemony. I mean, the Russians, after the Korean War, was kind of the first thing to set up an opposing, geopolitical foe kind of thing. But they were still mostly concerned with their countries that Russia was dominating. They weren't really interested in policing the world or creating world order. So the United States, stood against in this Cold War with Russia, right? Was the only nation strong enough to stand up against them, only wealthiest nation to stand up against them as we rebuilt, all the economies of Europe and Asia. Now we have over 50 allies, right? Mostly NATO, but other ones. Our navies police all the trade routes in the world, right? Which is sort of a public good, even for countries that don't pay taxes or hate us, they reap this benefit. And so, the countries, the economies of the world have rebuilt. There are good questions made for people on both sides of whether we need to maintain our place at the head of hegemony. I mean, a military role, but we've also had dominance in, when it comes to trade. Our currency is the de facto trade currency. Basically, our laws are the laws that everybody has to do business under. So there have been things that have benefited us. There's some good and bad with both of those, with our strong dollar and with other things. But there's a lot of fear about losing any of that, right? We're talking about any type of decline. And there have in recent years been some proposals about some alternative things to those things that America currently dominates. In other words, the UN is here in the U.S. We provide that sort of haven and place for it.
Yep.
But 2025, is a new dawn, and we should re-examine whether, right, with the Cold War over, we do have Russia is still a geopolitical foe, China is ascendant, Islam is very dangerous. Whether we need to, what changes we need to make in our hegemony, and certainly maintaining a World War II, post World War II style system can feel antiquated, right? And I think Trump would say making changes to that would be part of keeping America great, helping America be great again. Changes. This is very worrying to Europe, right, or to our allies, of anything replacing it, because they'd have to step up now. But now that one of the things we found by Trump requesting or expecting them to pay a higher percentage of their GDP to military budgets, they can do this now. They're not bombed out economies like they were in 1950, who had to have tiny little cars for all the people. They are full-fledged, they're fully rebuilt. They can feed themselves. There's no reason why they can't participate, why they need to lend on us so much, other than it's really nice for them to get a free pass. People who get a free pass suddenly don't like payment. So that's sort of, I think, where we're at now is Trump is questioning these free passes and whether some sensible common sense changes could be made. And the resistance people have to any type of changes. One of those just being, hey, we provide security for Greenland. Shouldn't they be? Maybe they should be a U.S. territory, right? Things like this,
Oh my God.
And then reassessing trade deficits. So for you, I'm interested. Then there's also questions about AI and technology and things like this. Is who adopts that? I'm interested in your take on why you think hegemony is important, and what do you think are some of the key things that we need to retain, even if things change in the future, to keep America great.
Oh yeah, boy, and yeah, that's the $1,000,000 question, right? So I obviously I'm a little bit partial to America, right? I was born here. Obviously, I'm a little bit partial to America, right? It's not that I think that we're the only nation that could carry this mantle. There's probably others that could do it. Would they be quite as good as us? Probably not, right? What worries me is the leading contenders aren't really the ones that are even the ones that I would think are contenders for doing it kind of sort of almost as good as us, right? Like if you were to tell me tomorrow that England was going to take over, I'd be like, okay, you know what I mean? I'd be upset, but we'd make it, right? If you were to tell me
naval history, right? They have a naval history, yeah.
If you were to tell me that like Austria is taking over, like, that's rough, but I think we'd make it. If you tell me tomorrow that China's taking over, I'm like, ooh, whoa, no, we're gonna have to immediately revolt, right? Like, because that kind of the way that China manages their people with this vice grip of control. Like, you guys think Trump is authoritarian? He's got nothing on the real dictators of the world. Like, it's not even
what the internet strips out, what information can be seen, viewed, read, and yeah.
Oh yeah. So that's why I think it's important that America maintains hegemony. Now, that isn't to say that America is perfect, because we are certainly not, right? And one of the things that Christian and I go back and forth on, one of the things that I'm not sure of in my stances, my political stances, is just how much interventionism to apply in the world, right? Just how much imperialism is a good thing, right? Obviously, I believe that we should for the most part we should let nations manage themselves. Nations should be self-directing, but there's costs that come with that, right? Like, and as Christian mentioned, here we are, letting encouraging people to take up their stake, to defend, to contribute to NATO, and to contribute to a portion of the defense of the world. But of course, the downside to making them do that is that now they're contributing a portion of the defense of the world, and now we're less powerful as a percentage of the world, right? Like, we're actually encouraging ourselves to lose market share of power, which is kind of a weird, like, catch-22, right? So yeah, So it's complicated, right? And one of the things that I do want to briefly go over with everybody is kind of like the levers of power that contribute to our dominance in the first place. Like you touched on some of them. Obviously, we have the military might, but the big thing that we've had ever since like I think it's like 1890-ish, like around right on the Spanish American War, is we've basically had the GDP, right? We've had the most economic production of the world, right? And all this stuff, by the way, goes together, right? Like you will very rarely find a nation that is the strongest militarily that somehow isn't the strongest economically. Like they're almost always hand in hand. You will very rarely find a nation that's the most powerful that somehow doesn't have the reserve currency. That's a big one, right? People overlook this a lot, but like before us, Britain had the reserve currency. Britain was the most powerful nation on earth. Before them, the Dutch, golden age, they had the reserve currency. They were the most powerful on earth. Before them, the Portuguese had the de facto reserve currency. They were the most powerful on earth and managed all the like exploration that spanned the globe and tied everybody together. And on and on. Yeah.
Well, the leftists, they'd love to do a Lisbon or a Portuguese style elegant decline. But
Sure.
right, but there's no way we're going to have that's going to happen for America, right? It would be ugly. It would anyway.
Yeah. No, so right. So that's a good part of it. But America has other levers of power too. Sorry. Like one of them is, and you heard this a lot recently with the when Trump tried to get rid of U.S. aid. People call it soft power, right? We have like a lot of this like cultural influence around the world. Like one of the many reasons that we have this economic dominance is that America kind of sets the tone with regard to like consumerism, right? Between Hollywood and music and social media and this, that, and the other, we're the hot commodity. Everybody wants to be like America, right? So they see the stuff that we have, the stuff that we buy, and then they want to buy it too, right?
Fashion, yeah. The standard of living is defined by the U.S.
Absolutely, and for good reason, right? And we also have some other advantages like geostrategic advantages. Like obviously, we're very blessed in where we are, right? We've got these nice, neat oceans that protect us from anybody that has any inkling of wanting to be our enemy. And the two nations that are closest to us that on the top and the bottom are allies and essentially non-issues, right? Like even if they did want to be our enemies, we'd be like, oh well, like it just wouldn't matter, right? And not that I'm saying that we should become Canada or Mexico's enemy, but like it wouldn't matter if they were. And so we also we're blessed with this huge wealth of resources, right? That's one of the big ones too. Like we may be the only nation that doesn't need to trade with anyone. It's better if we do, right? We're obviously everybody's benefited from trade, but we don't have to. We have everything that we need, like food, natural resources in the ground for metal and stuff like that. We can produce anything that we would need to survive. Um, and there's a great many things that we could produce that we don't need to survive that like are just in excess or make us exceptional. And a few things that we used to produce that made us exceptional that we've kind of offshored in recent years, which is what one of the things that Trump is trying to bring back is, our ability to be 100% self-sustaining, right? Like energy is a big factor, semiconductors, rare earth elements and things like that. Like we have all that stuff. We just let it all go, we just let it all slide because, maybe it was advantageous at a time, economically, but the security of having those things here in-house is probably too big to
Yeah.
ignore.
Yeah. So
That's a
one
big
of
one.
the effects of having all of this influence on all this wealth, right, and people follow our lead, is we've gotten to the chance to sort of set the tone in foreign policy, as is appropriate, as you would
Yep.
expect. We have a large foreign service, right? We have ambassadorships in almost every country, and when our president meets with world leaders, that is world news, right? When so one of the things to me that's scary about America losing hegemony is when I think about the countries that would take over, like Great Britain, France, Australia, Canada. They're all virtue signaling right now by doing really stupid and short-sighted things like recognizing the Palestinian state. for no reason.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, look, we can't trust you if you're going to do these things. This is so stupid and short-sighted. Like, look, yeah, put a coexist sticker on your bumper, but you don't act like you're an ignorant world power, especially Great Britain. You know there were people in that room who have years and years of foreign service and understand cultures as good as the West can understand these Middle Eastern cultures. And
Right.
but just throwing that out the window and saying, let's just recognize Israel anyways, or Palestine anyways. Let's just call all of Israel Palestine. That's what the French are doing. Anyways, right?
Right.
And they're doing this to please for their own political power in their countries and not caring about the stability, of the world. And this is the thing, like, Hamas is not a real government that can govern that area without corruption and live in peace with their neighbors. They are openly saying they have no interest in living peace with their neighbors. So recognizing them is about the most irresponsible thing a country can do, and one that I think is disqualifying as far as, like, oh, you want to be taken seriously as maybe you're the one that can take over and lead world policy, foreign policy.
Yeah.
Right?
Let me
You're doing this
can I
all for your individual political power. Go on.
let me give you a little pushback and ask your thoughts on
Sure.
this. Now, is it the same thing to recognize Palestine as to recognize Hamas?
Yes, because Palestine, a Palestinian state, there's no other government entity in the
Yeah.
West Bank or, right? Yeah. There's only one government that's been publicly elected anywhere that even calls himself a government other than Hamas,
Well,
right?
PLO, I
There's,
guess, sort of, but they
no,
wouldn't
no,
win.
they Abbas completely, like,
Yeah,
resigned
in
out of
Gaza.
corruption, and nobody's replaced him. Nobody has any interest in replacing him.
Right,
Right?
right.
Nobody wants to govern because Israel does, but they don't does a fine job of governing the Palestinian territories, right?
Right,
As
right.
far as the West Bank, right? The people can live under Israeli, they're not corrupt, their law. But Hamas, right, is right. That's why even the Saudis were ready to normalize relationships with Israel. They don't consider Hamas a legitimate government. They don't want to,
Yeah, of
none of
course.
these countries
Well,
are recognizing Palestine, but it's virtual signaling. It's very short-sighted, and it's meant to sort of, it's not serious foreign policy, which makes you think, like, okay, these guys need to be on the sidelines. America needs to retain hegemony. So, like, it only really matters what the U.S. does. When the U.S. puts their embassy in Jerusalem, that matters.
sure.
Anybody else doesn't. You might get featured in the newspaper once and then forgotten. Who cares?
Right. So you think that so basically the government in your philosophy the government and the governance is like irrevocably intertwined, basically. You just
Well,
can't.
when you're officially recognized in a country, they should
Right.
have a government that you're ready to set up diplomatic relations with. Who are they
Okay.
going to set up diplomatic relationships with this country they've just recognized? If it's not Israel, it's got to be Hamas because there's no other government, right?
Yeah.
And then the Hamas, the officials are in exile in Qatar or wherever, right? But if you're saying you're a legitimate country that we are now going to say has a name and we're going to set up diplomatic relations with it, Hamas is the only
Yeah.
partner there, right?
Yeah,
So
it's interesting. It reminds me of like when France helped us with the Revolutionary War, right? Basically gifted us our independence. Without them, there's no way we'd have made it.
yeah.
And then, like, almost immediately afterwards, they're like, help, but like they didn't have a king. So we're like, well, I don't know if you count anymore. So it's like, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I can see that could be an
Yeah.
interesting line to draw, right? Like if you don't have a
Who are you
government that,
helping?
right? Yeah. Now, me personally, I'm in favor of, or rather, in favor is a strong word. I have no problem with the two-state solution, but yeah, they're going to need. It can't be Hamas.
Well, it's not yet. I mean, if there was a two-state solution, it's premature. I
Right.
mean, this is wishful thinking. I'd like there to be a two-state solution, so I'm just going to pretend there is one and
Right.
recognize two states.
Yeah. That's
Right? That's not serious foreign policy. right?
Right. Yeah. Now it does. It does bring up another question, which is like, so let's say we actually succeed in getting all of these other nations to like put in their own bids, right? To like finally take charge of their foreign policy for them. Because one thing that's bothered me this whole time, and that Trump actually made a point of saying this in this speech the other day, is that Russia and all of these problems in like Europe and Russia and the Middle East are taking place, and meanwhile the UN's just like crickets. Like all this time they say they might give you a strongly worded letter, and that's it. Like that's their entire proactivity. And so of course it always falls to America to make the statements, or to like get involved and try to negotiate peace, or to do this, that, and the other. Like basically the UN is just like for show. But the flip side to that is, if we actually encourage them to be more than just for show, and then they do stupid stuff like that, are we not at least partially responsible for encouraging them to take the power to make that kind of mistake?
It's true. I mean, there's that. I mean, I think if we talk about, in a lot of ways, America's influence, if we withdrew from all our alliances, say this year, right? Well, our military alliances, say that if, say, Denmark was attacked, we don't automatically go to war with whoever attacks them, right?
Right.
Is America still going to be influential just because of our wealth, because of the desirability of our markets, right? And immigrants still want to come here. People, right, all throughout the world still want to come to America.
Definitely.
I don't think that changes if our military alliances change. And we need to really, I mean, people want to be aligned with us, right? It's like the movie, My Bodyguard is that. Yeah, you love to have a big tough guy walking around protecting you from bullies,
Definitely.
right? But if that guy just says, well, I want to live a quiet life and with my wife instead of protecting you from bullies all the time,
Right.
are you, okay?
Yeah.
You kind of have to. And I guess the thing is, it has to be in our interest still. And the
Yeah.
world, when we say that, when Trump says that, it says for us to do this, it has to be in our interest.
Right.
And the world is saying, well, that's kind of petty. Like,
Yeah. Well, how is that fair? What, you want something for your time and effort and money and dedication and all the this is one of the things that it drives me kind of crazy, actually, because you briefly touched on the Marshall Plan. Like this whole time we've been giving, right? We've been giving and we've been giving and we give. And to be fair, like we received in the very beginning, like I said, we wouldn't have become a nation in the first place if we hadn't gotten help along the way. And until we'd really decided to get involved in these global affairs, we were basically a non-issue, and we needed the help too. But like the moment we got involved and we became the superpower, like after we emerged from World War II, it was really just us. I mean, we kind of let Russia become a factor again, but like we didn't have to. We could have just taken over the rest of the world right then. But we chose to be very graceful.
yeah.
We chose to be like good stewards of the rest of the world. We chose not to be so overtly imperialistic. And we built everyone back up for years and years and years. And then what drives me crazy is that, like, we are giving gifts. And then the moment we say, all right, you're back on your feet, are you okay now? Right? Everybody's losing their mind. And I'm like,
yeah, but no, they're acting like soccer players who just got scratched. They're on their knee. My career is over, right? They're acting,
falling
and
over like,
no, of course, nobody wants the money spigot to end, or to step up and for the free ride to be over. I mean, here's the other issue. Excuse me. The United States. So to use a example, like when there's new technologies or something new, there's a lot of emerging ideas. Let's look at cell phones. So there were a lot of different ways to plug in and power up cell phones, right?
right.
They thought, and now there's one, right? Everybody uses this USB, whether Apple, iPhone, or whoever. Everybody uses the same. No matter your thing, that's called a protocol, right? You want people to adopt your protocol, even if they're your competitors or things like that. That's why the U.S., part of their hegemony was they could kind of set protocols for the world, and people would fall in line. Other than nobody follows our weights and measures, where take your meters and centimeters and stick it. But other than that, like our protocols are the standards that people meet. As far as especially new technology, space technology, things like that. If we decided to intentionally, I'm talking about intentionally withdraw some of our hegemony, post World War II hegemony, um, would we still have that kind of influence? And would people still want to follow it? Is our wealth, is our numbers big enough to do that, or is that something where we might have to secede, and follow the lead of somebody else? Now, AI is the big one. I know it's the big scary thing for you, but following the lead on this, one of the things people have talked about on it is Trump's immigration policies are influencing who's going to be the leader in AI. That AI scientists from China or India or Pakistan don't want to come to the U.S. to develop AI. Might stay in their own places, but there are obviously problems because to train AI, you need free speech, you need freedom of information, you need all this stuff to develop it. And really, this is the only place where any of that freedom means anything.
Right. Right. So you mean like with the H-1B policies and stuff,
H-1Bs and just the tightening up of general immigration, like they talk about. From we have a lot of Chinese and East Indian tech people that we would not that are choosing not to come to the U.S. because of the Trump's immigration climate. Now, I think part of this is that the objection to Trump's immigration policies, which are very common sense, has been overblown by the left. And this is where I think we can talk about it, that one of the things that might decline American hegemony is our own internal Cold War that we are experiencing here in America with the left and the right. That our own division, right? We can't. The left has gotten so crazy. That is, I think, a big threat to our declining influence, are being taken seriously in the West. And I want to think, there's a lot to say in this, but what do you think? How about the Democrat Party or the left in general, and America, as opposed to other nations, right and left politics? How do you think it influences us on the world stage?
Oh yeah, it's huge. I mean, so ultimately there's, I've kind of broken it down into two different large groups as to what might threaten our hegemony in the future. One, of course, is the external threats, and then one of the internal threats. And with regard to the internal threats, 100%. Like with the fact that the fact that people are even saying the words civil war out there, like even if it's not that serious, it's just kind of a phantom so far. That's huge. Like we've gotten to the point where we're so polarized, right? And it echoes not just like our animosity toward each other. It also echoes in our faith in our institutions, right? Like the fact that we no longer treat our education system with the same reverence that we used to, and it used to be like far and away the best education system in the world. Like it used to be, people would come over here from miles around from every nation to try to be in American institutions, Harvard, Yale, etc. Princeton, because
even high schools, even just normal high schools,
absolutely. We used to have the best education system, and we had the technological edges in basically every field. But we're losing a lot of those, and a lot of this is, some of it is because we don't trust our institutions anymore. Like even institutions like elections, right? Like election integrity. Like we're starting to lose our trust in election integrity. We're starting to lose our trust in a whole number of things, right? Like we're starting to lose our trust in the media, the social media, the news. Just the other day, right? Like people are on the verge of getting fired, maybe rehired because of blatant lies, right? And it's let's just, I'm not really going to get into Jimmy Kimmel, but I don't really consider him a real news person, right? Like, so it's not like I turn on Kimmel when I'm like, ooh, I want to find out what's happening in the world. But that being said, like the fact that you're on a network like that, and
you have a platform like that,
and you're able to say like completely false statements, it's like, man, then how do you trust anybody? Because then of course, and I'm one of the guys who will tell you he has every right to lie. There's, the freedom of speech
Government
protects
didn't
his
come
right to lie,
after him. Yeah.
right? So, like, I mean, what can I say? But that, by the same token, is he has every right to lie. That's the problem. Everyone does, which means when I look at the news, I darn sure don't trust him. I have to like fact check everything like a million times, right? And so we've gotten to the point where a lot of our institutions are starting to crumble, right? And
Yeah.
not just our political and our like large scale network institutions, but like a lot of our social institutions, family, faith, religion, stuff like that. Like, and as each one of those things crumbles, I mean, you look at every major superpower in the world, and those institutions have started falling right before before that nation fell, before that
Yeah.
power fell, right? Starting with Rome and on. I
Well,
mean, even
yeah.
before then.
Well, I mean, right, because the left, it's scary to think of the left governing, and Britain's been a great example of this. The Tory party, the Conservatives, were not perfect. They had weaknesses. They had some stuff, and the voters responded by voting in the opposition. But the opposition has just been a disaster. And sure, I mean, the Republican Party is a Big Ten party. We have a lot of diversity of ideas. We don't have 100% agreement in the party. Different wings of the party that are in line with Trump that aren't. But the alternative of letting the left govern is just terrifying, right? Because they're, how their policies are driven by this sort of hopeful emotionalism rather than serious governance and this very far left Marxist ideology. And so one of the things, right, we've talked about in the history, like why Russia, when the Soviet Union fell, George Bush was the president. He was an ex-CIA guy. He knew foreign policy. He knew the history, all the players, everything going in there to
Yep.
negotiate a peaceful come down of that Cold War and the end of the Soviet Union. And James Baker said that NATO won't move 1 inch east, right? But then what happened was, right, and so Russia felt good about that, and he didn't lie. George Bush didn't lie. During the George Bush administration, nothing happened. But we have here in America regime change, and we switched over to the other party. The other party wanted to make their stamp, so they started expanding NATO, right? Russia. So one of the things is that when Trump makes agreements, and people might really believe Trump, but one of the things that weakens their ability to trust America is if power is turned over to the left, is very right. They know nothing that they agree to with Trump and the government now will be honored,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're
So,
immediately going to jettison anything just because it was associated with Trump, and so that makes it difficult for us to have long-term impacts, even beneficial ones like building the wall or these trade deals that Trump will strike. Uh, in 4 years, they might be going well, and if the left gets in, oh, the fact that Trump negotiated them, they'll dump them, just on principle. And this type of sort of short-sightedness, I think, weakens America's influence,
oh,
and
definitely.
not only makes it and has led to this climate within America, right? Where now, right, what we talked about in Dallas, people are shooting uh, at ICE facilities because the left has said that any type of immigration enforcement is tantamount to violence and should be met with violence. This is
Right.
their rhetoric, and so their followers, their common man, are interpreting that as go out and commit violence. You are justified,
Yeah,
right?
that's insane.
And we're saying you're not justified. Do not commit violence. And
Never.
we need to change that rhetoric, and we need to come together and have some commonalities. So for what it means to govern and what it means to responsibly lead people, so that when power changes, there is some stability in the world and
Oh,
in America.
let me. I'm trying to get some clarification, Tanya. I didn't really understand your questions. That's why I was trying to figure out which statement you're referring to. Because Tanya says, do you think that instead of saying they got crazy, that the right could say maybe they need more help to understand which event, which person got crazy? I don't remember anybody saying that. I don't remember hearing
The left. I said the left has gotten increasingly far left with Marxist ideology, right?
Okay, yeah,
Right, and on social issues, but also on right. And this is the part of the thing now is that people are going to support foreign wars, based on like, okay, and does my party support this war or not? Right? Well, it used to be the Democrats were always against war, were for peace, and Republicans were always for, you know, doing it as long as we could win. And now it's like, oh, the Democrats got us into Ukraine. The Republicans are uninterested, right? If there's something that Trump does, then Democrats are uninterested in funding that or being a part of that. So, right, we can't unite even on that. Like, the left has become so knee jerk in their TDS, and admittedly, the Republicans have been very skeptical. I think for good reason. We've talked about on the channel about the Ukraine war and about corruption and how it has started. But support for these things should be on their own merits and not necessarily along political divides, domestic political divides.
definitely. Yeah, so Tanya, I'm not trying to be obtuse. I just don't understand which statement you're referring to, who said it, and then what they were talking about. Because I think she's saying I said something, but I don't recall having called anybody crazy. Maybe I was referring to the fact that the Hamas to indicate the Hamas should take over a government is crazy. Maybe that's the only thing I can think of, but I'm not sure what we're talking about. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of craziness in our nation, and it's crazy polarization, and it's not limited to one side. But obviously, you've got between the two sides, there's one group that's largely trying to uphold the institutions that the nation was founded upon, and one side that's largely trying to destroy those institutions. Of the two, obviously, I'm partial to the one that's trying to uphold the institutions that made us the global superpower, that made us the strongest nation on earth, that made us the nation that is still number one for immigration, the nation that everybody wants to come to, the nation that had the best education, the nation that had the best this, the best that, the best everything, the nation. I mean, it's not that I'm saying that anything opposed to that is crazy by default, but if you've got
She said I called the left crazy.
well, maybe
And
I don't
yeah,
know.
and the left became what I call crazy. Their rhetoric, they by calling anything anything right of center, really, and they have moved very far to the left. But anything that's not within their bubble of orthodoxy, they brand Nazi, fascist, a threat to democracy, essentially apocalyptic, and have justified and have used violent rhetoric to justify it in their minds. And what we're reaping now is that leftists, a lot of trans people, which is a big part of their movement and their trans rights, have felt justified in using violence against innocent people. Now using violence against public people, against Charlie Kirk, right, against public people on the right, and now against the government, who any representation of the official government is now associated with the right wing. Those people are doing their jobs. They will represent the government, whether it was Obama or Trump. They're doing their jobs. They're just enforcing the laws. But the left has said that has gone crazy that enforcing the law, right, is tantamount to violence and deserves violence. That's what I'm saying, and I feel like that they need to walk that back. There needs to be some serious repentance. And Jimmy Kimmel, for all of his statements when he went back on the air, did not apologize for misleading and America, right? Just right that he's a martyr for free speech, right? Not a hypocrite for.
No, I'll give him that. Yeah. I'll give him that. Okay. But here's what I'll say, Tanya, and I want to make sure that everyone in this channel listens to the differences when we say these things too. I'm not attacking the people, right? Yes. I understand the people, right? And I understand the pain that people that some of these people may be feeling, right? Like the person who shot Charlie Kirk, obviously undergoing some serious personal life crises, right? Obviously. I don't understand that person's actions. right? And I will not understand those person's actions.
Or
There's nothing.
justify them. Yeah.
Yeah, nor will I try to justify. Right? It's classic. Like hate the sin, love the sinner. I love the sinner. I hate that sin. Right? I will never understand that sin, and I don't want people to think that I'm calling that person crazy. Although maybe he is technically, as per medical definitions. I don't know what those definitions even are. But yeah, no, I understand that he's probably experiencing some terrible you know some terrible psychosis. I get it. I get it. That's going to be tough on him, right? And I mean, anybody who's trans experiences that by definition, and anybody who's shooting at ICE officers almost certainly is having some kind of crisis in their life, and I feel their pain. I don't understand what they're doing, and I don't understand why they're doing it. But
Well, I think the elites on the left, right? We in this channel are very skeptical of elites' agenda, right? Uses this language that's over the top in Western society, is rarely used to use the strongest language. When it's being heard by the common men on the left, right?
yeah,
The common regular non-elites on the left, they're interpreting these as signals that justify this violence,
yeah,
right? And
that's
then
the
they're
big
like, "No,
problem,
I didn't do it." Well, yeah, because the elites would never act this out.
right?
But
Of
right,
course.
and they think by using strong violence is they're just trying to act tough and macho. But it's going on. That's why, right? If they're willing to debate, right? This is so important. Charlie Kirk willing to debate and hear ideas that are outside their bubble, rather than closing them off and saying any type of speech, any type of ideas, anything that is on the right, um, is automatically invalid, is white supremacist, is evil, is racist, type of things like that, misogynist, means they don't have to consider it. And then
Right.
they can even brand it that it's violence, right? And needs to be met with violence. These are things that they have said for a long time. Their elites have said for a long time. Now the elites, they haven't had to live with the consequences, but we're seeing what this is creating is a cold civil war, right? With flare-ups that are flaring up into violence. And so it's not going to be like it with secession, like the American Civil War, like civil wars we see there, but that still unheard of here in America of somebody targeting you in your neighborhoods for your perceived political beliefs being opposite theirs. They perceive you as a political opponent, and they're usually because of stereotypes, right? You see a white man, people stereotype you as a supporter of right politics. People see a black woman, they just assume that they're a supporter of left politics, right? Right? And might act accordingly to that rather than right. I've known lots of black women who are supportive of right politics, and a lot of white men who are supportive of left politics. But what starts acting out is people get these sort of general stereotypes and then will start acting out violently against who they just perceive as their enemies, because of identity politics has become so poisonous on the left.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, yeah, right. So, but this is, we've dwelt on this one for quite a while, but the truth is, while I believe that this political divide is hurting America, I don't think it's the number one thing that's contributing to our decline. I think largely our bigger problems are going to be economic in nature. I think this is just my estimate, right? I fear that we will lose the reserve currency in the next 5 years. That's just my estimate. And part of the reason is because BRICS has done a really good job of organizing, right? And there are so many different options, right? So even if it's not BRICS coming up with some kind of alternative currency, I'm afraid that, China will put together some kind of gold-backed yuan, or maybe some kind of globalized group will come up with some kind of global cryptocurrency that'll replace it. Either way, we're going to have to step double time to make sure that the American reserve currency remains. And I don't
Well,
think that we're
you know,
we're fighting against that hard enough. I think that's something that we really need to make a priority. That's just and I think that everything else follows from that. The moment we lose our reserve currency, we're going to lose a lot of the trust in our economic institutions. We're going to have to pay higher interest rates. We're going to have, and our debt is already crippling. That's another huge, huge, huge financial issue is the fact that
that
our
matters to
debt
the
is
common man, yeah.
yeah, 38 trillion dollars almost, and it will be 38 trillion by the end of the year. And the interest that we're paying on it is outrageous, right? And we got numbskulls that don't want to lower interest rates, meanwhile we had to like beg and plead. Trump had to like beg, plead, cajole, threat everything like before this guy like dropped half a point, just half a point. That's it.
No,
And
not
like
even half a point.
not even
25 points, a quarter of a
yeah,
point.
not even. That's insane. Like, and again, right? I'm not calling the person insane. I'm calling the actions insane, right? Yeah, I'm not sure if that's a great question, Tanya. I'm not sure if the left knows what we one thing I will grant is that the left often has a tough time separating the action from the person, right? Like that's part of identity politics and at its core, right? Is like, for example, like you take trans person, right? I would say that being trans is something you do. They would say being trans is something that you are, right? And while I might refer to an individual action that a trans person might take as an action that makes no sense to me, they'll automatically incorporate that into and like compress it all and say that I'm saying that the person makes no sense to me. I'm not saying that, but it's difficult that the left and the right have that kind of like lost in translation thing, right? So yeah, you're right. You're right to point out that it's difficult to know um, whether or not they're going to misunderstand what I'm saying. And I do. We, Christian and I, we try to take time to like explain it, right? Like we try to take time to say what we mean. But sometimes this is one of the toughest parts for me is I'll explain what I mean, and then a lot of times on the left they'll say, "No, I don't mean that," and I'm like, "What?" Like I'll literally take the time to say, "No, no, no. I really, I love, I love the sinner. I hate the sin." And they'll say, "No, you don't. You hate the sinner." And I'm like, I just told you that's not, I don't know what you want me to say, but that's not true. I'm sorry.
Well, the radical left, especially the LGBT, the TQI Marxists have rejected that loving the sinner, hating the sin type of thing, and any type of pushback, right? Even like J.K. Rowling, sort of common sense pushback on what is a woman, right, is treated with a sort of level of hysteria. And we look at 2022 as sort of a peak woke era where they got people around the world to agree, and condemn J.K. Rowling for having a feminist idea. Now that is coming down. There are a lot of other countries that are now trying to come around and trying to promote common sense ideas on immigration, right? And and on these gender leftist Marxist policies that have gotten really, really bad in Europe and in Great Britain.
Yep.
Um, they're being dismissed as just being right wing extremists, right?
Of
Because
course.
right, rather than right, nobody wants to debate them. Right,
Right.
it's taken them very long. It's taken years to try. People have to go to jail over and over again just to before ideas start getting talked about. This, in America, we shouldn't. Uh, we have some protections. We have right to bear arms and real a rule of law here that is not degraded so much. And I think that's why still America is still more desirable to come live here than anywhere else. America is number one. I would say that for sure. Um, but we should. I don't think that we can take for granted that we're going to be that the world is going to turn to us as they virtue signal. They just might feel like the U.S. by just having traditional views, or maybe embracing our Christian that we're Christian nations and that our leaders are unabashedly Christian.
Yeah.
That's definitely separating from the secular governments of Europe and Asia and the communist governments is
So
putting
listen,
us more odds. And there's a lot of pressure to weaken that, and I think that will weaken our hegemony more.
definitely.
And should we give into those sort of pressure from the world, the globalists?
Definitely, definitely. So yeah. Tanya, I don't want to get caught on that one thing for the entire time. I do want to kind of get back to the topic at hand. Not that I'm saying that's not important, but like we kind of did a whole show on that at one point in time. But yeah, like it's not that it's not that we're labeling people, we're labeling actions, right? And actions, you have to have words for actions you don't like. I mean, it's not like you can't just not address them, right? That's the soul of politics. You have to talk about them, right? So I'd be much it's much more important to discuss the actions to get toward unity than it is to just not talk about them. If you're talking about shying away from talking about them just for fear that you might offend somebody, that's the worst thing that you can do for unity. You will never actually accomplish unity if you don't talk about it. So anyway, but let's talk about the things that I feel are truly threats to American hegemony. One of them we discussed, right, was the reserve currency decline. China and Russia and India are big threats, right? And it's not that they're threats because they're trying to be, although China probably kind of sort of is. India is just a threat just because it's going to be a threat. Like, it's not even like doing anything to be a threat. It's just going to be one, right?
A billion people.
Yeah. It's the largest, right? It's the most populous nation on earth, and they're economically inclining very, very, very rapidly. From the projection that I've seen, China's probably going to be the number one economic power GDP wise in about 2 years, and India will probably be the number one economic superpower in 4 years. And from the current rates of of change, of acceleration, nobody's going to catch India, like, ever. The way that it's going, the way that it's inclining currently, it's moving up so much faster than every other nation that, and our growth is stagnating, right? And it's not even necessarily something that America's doing, but it's just, India's. It's a part of the thing is, like, per capita, our GDP is much, much higher than most nations, right? Like, the only nations that are higher than us are, like, Americans that live in, like, vacation destinations like Monaco or Bermuda,
Barbados,
or like, right. That's it. But it's not like, as far as nations that are serious, like that have like actual populations of working people, America's far and away the most. If India gets to even be half of our GDP per capita, they're like way beyond us in total GDP output, right? So that's part of it, right? Another thing too is that, with BRICS, Brazil, I don't even Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, right? Yeah, I keep getting, because Saudi Arabia is now part of the BRICS
and
engine
Korean.
too.
Yeah,
So I get those two mixed up with the S. But anyway, they're obviously trying to be a direct competitor with NATO and with the UN. So I don't know how that's going to play out. It's going to be interesting.
Well, all right. One thing about India politics, I've been to India. There's a lot of growth. The curves are not going to be smooth. There's going to be a lot of up and down. But there are minor political parties there that'll have 150 million votes, right, in their elections. And they're minor. They might have, 3 or 4 seats in the parliament or something like that. Like, when the populations are so large, like,
that'd be cool.
Like, what?
That'd be cool to have here. Like, that'd be cool for us to have, like, I mean, not like 150 million, because for us that's half of our country.
But yeah. So there are, like, 40 or 50 different political parties in India, right? And to get even just a few seats, you've got to get, over 100 million votes, right? For you to hope that you get a seat somewhere. So it's it's a very different thing. It's not going to be smooth. There's a big change in agriculture and cities and things like when I went to India, it kind of looks like what America would be like if we had no borders.
Yeah, it does a little.
What happens, like Bangalore, right, was a city of 5 million people, and then they started to do well. They started to prosper. There was a lot of tech going on there. And then in 5 years, 5 more million people moved there.
Right.
And you just couldn't keep up with that. 1 million people a year moving to a city, their infrastructure, you go there and it just feels like they're overwhelmed. Right. And they're making this stuff, but it's because when you're in the country, it's like everybody can move there. You're like, oh, this is going to, like, boom, we'll just go there. Right. And so this is type of thing, like, our immigration policy has been a part of, like, give us the time to integrate, to build up our things. Let's just have so India, it's not going to be smooth, but it's definitely them rising up from the third world to being having an American style standard of living, even if it's 50% of what we enjoy here in North Carolina, would be still a pretty huge leap. But would change a lot of things on the world stage.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean, there's that, and then Russia's still a destabilizing agent for us. I don't think they're going to ever take over as a superpower, but they're definitely able to cause distractions, right? Like while China and India are growing so vastly, like Russia with their ability. First of all, they still have the largest nuclear arsenal on Earth, which is not nothing, right? It's definitely still something to pay attention to. Secondly, they still have proven their ability to drain our resources, right? They've proven their ability to catch our eye and get us involved in these wars that Russia Ukraine should never have been something that we've been drawn into as a quagmire, right? If we got involved, it should have been a quick thing. We should have made a real thing of it, and then it should have been out, then in one and done, and then solved the problem. But instead, we've gotten to this point where we're just bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. And I mean, maybe we can handle one of those. Maybe we can handle two, right? Between Russia and Gaza. Maybe we can handle three. But if we get into a situation where we're bleeding in three different places and then have a real encounter in Taiwan with China, head to head, then we're in trouble, right? Because then after we've overextended ourselves, we're in a spot where we have to fight a real near peer adversary, right? 100 miles from their homeland. That's not going to be fun, right? That's not going to be enjoyable. And even if we make it, it's going to be a situation where it's much more devastating than it would normally have been if we could focus all of our resources and all our attention on the thing that actually matters instead of all this pity pat stuff all over the world, right?
The worst case scenario is, right, we'd be caught in quagmires. That's what Trump is wanting to keep us out of quagmire military engagements, right?
Yes.
The quick hit on Iran and things like that, so that we can represent a real threat, right, to stabilize Taiwan and other places. We're not bogged down in quagmires that they would like us to be, but the worst case scenario would be we'd be bogged down in 2 or 3 different engagements, and then all of a sudden, right, our Federal Reserve or the leftists within start doing something crazy monetary policy. We can't borrow money. People start calling in their debts, and we start having austerity crises, right? So there's lots of things we need to be. I think for American hegemony, we need a 50-year plan, and not just a 4-year plan or an 8-year plan.
Right.
And we have to have those as well, but we need a 50-year plan, and it needs to be something that both sides are on board, right? During the Cold War, you knew whether the Democrats or the Republicans, they were going to be opposed to Russia, and they were going to maintain sort of the mutual assured destruction, right? Nobody was changing that. We need some sort of trust that if some commonality that if we turn power over to the left, that there's certain core issues that we're going to be consistent on internationally, and I don't think that really exists right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so there's 2 more big things that I think are threats to American hegemony. One is our cultural value system, and what I mean by that is not just the way that we've historically held personal values. What I mean is that there's a sense of country, a sense of nation that we used to have, right? It used to be an American exceptionalism that used to push us through, right? One of the reasons that we were so capable in all of our engagements before the point where we were just the best, right? Before we were a military superpower, we still hadn't ever lost, right? We still won every engagement because every major engagement, every major war, because we had that firm belief that we should be the best, right? That we were America, and this is America, and we're the best at what we do, and we're going to not lose, and we're going to that's where all of our American exceptionalism came from, was this history of just knowing that America stands for something and that it's something good and holy and righteous, right? And we've lost sight of that.
There too, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've lost sight of that. Part of the trouble with the immigration situation is that when you encourage so many people to come in, especially so many people who don't even really like America, they're just here because we have better economic opportunity or something like that, or better, or this, that, less crime, less drug lords or whatever, right? Which are all good things. We'd love to have more people over here. We'd love to have them actually adapt our sense of America, right? We want them to enjoy our culture. And it's not like, I'm not saying this in like an elitist, like white supremacist way. I'm not saying this like it has to be European. No, our melting pot is part of our culture, but people have to be willing to embrace that Americanism, right? They have to be willing to come in and become part of that melting pot. You can't just be like a bunch of islands, right? It can't just be a bunch of men apart in the same nation. Otherwise, we won't be fighting for each other anymore. We won't be like in the same society. It's just like a bunch of islands, like I said, right? So I think that we need to really recover that. One of the big reasons that Rome started to fall was because that's what it turned into. It wasn't one empire anymore. It was a bunch of little nations, many of which hated Rome because Rome had conquered them, right? Like, and like these are situations where we're not even conquering people; they're coming here, and we're letting them come, right? These people should owe us everything. They should be so immensely happy that we were kind enough to let immigrants into our nation, that we were able to give them these great economic opportunities, that we were able to lift their families up out of these places where they were persecuted or running away from drug gangs. This should be like, it should be an easy no, like a no brainer, right? Like it should be like the easiest thing in the world to have these people in our corner, loving us, taking care of us, wanting to be American. But for some reason, we've gotten to the point where we're letting so many people in so fast that they just don't have time to acclimate. They don't have time to understand our history. They don't have time to understand why being an American is important and what's so important about it, what's special about it. Right? That's a huge thing, and I think if we lose that, then we're gonna be in trouble. Right? We're gonna get to the point where we're gonna be fighting each other far more than we're fighting, any external threats. The last big thing is we need to be able to adapt on the military battlefield, and this has historically been our strength. I hope that it remains so, but there are so many things that are changing in the battlefield. Like, we've gotten to the point where we've gotten very good at being like the heavy hitters in the area, like to do these mass scale war expertise things, like right now we run the world because we have these giant naval battle groups, right? That's why we are so powerful. But we're coming fast to a time where that's not going to mean the difference between being the winner and the loser. It probably was the past century, right? That was what made us the winner in World War II. It's what made us the winner in Korea and stuff like that. It's what makes us the strongest and the most capable now. But it's going to get to the point where like itty bitty decentralized platforms are going to take over, and like one aircraft carrier in a battle group is going to be worthless against 200,000 drones, right? Because we may shoot down 80,000 of them and still have the vast majority of them land and sink, right? Like it's just going to be nothing that we can do about that. We're going to have to be able to adapt. There's going to be like a lot of unmanned aerial vehicles, a lot of unmanned submersible vehicles that we're going to have to be able to manage that new battlefield terrain. And the biggest one, I know for those of y'all who've watched this channel for a while, the one I keep pressing on, the one I keep on talking about, we are going to have to be able to manage the cislunar battlefield, right? That is the space between Earth and the moon, right? We're going to have to be able to manage everything above our atmosphere, right? And so this is like general military strategy from like the dawn of time. Whoever has the higher ground has the huge advantage, right? Well, this is the new high ground, right? Anything above our satellite systems, like you see satellites float around the Earth, anything above that can topple those satellites is going to be a huge advantage, like an enormous advantage. And countries like China are already testing anti-satellite weaponry and anti-satellite platforms and anti-satellite equipment and stuff like that. If we lose our satellite network, we lose, right? We no longer have the ability to target. We no longer have the ability to like tell time or figure out where we're going. We won't be able to navigate. We won't be like, everything goes away. We lose everything if we lose our satellite. So we've got to be able to control that space. We've got to make sure that we're the people. China's very fast beating us to the moon. They might even beat us to Mars. If they get to the point where they're the new space dominant force, I think we're in trouble. So anyway, yeah. So guys, that's what we had for you today. Sorry, we got kind of derailed. What do you want to talk real quick about Dallas? which I guess just happened. I was
Sure.
catching up on this.
Yes. All right. So again, yeah, Dallas, indicative of again this divide on American immigration policy and it being vilified by the opponents, right? Because this is attacking their political power. We've established this. Trump has closed the border. He's reducing the wait list for refugees, right, to be able to get a hearing by hundreds of thousands, right? And we get to the point where somebody right now, if somebody comes in and says, I'm a refugee, they say, okay, here's a court date in 7 years, right? It's like they get a 7-year work visa, right? Just like that.
Right.
If Trump can, by closing the border and with no new immigration, working through this backlog, we can get to a point where somebody comes and says, I'm a refugee. Okay, you'll have a court date to prove if you're a legitimate refugee in 2 weeks. Boom, boom. Right? Clear out that backlog. We can get rid of a lot of the fraud in the system and we can be able to take on legitimate refugees. But by just enforcing the system, by closing the border, and by going after people that came here illegally, that we have every right to be skeptical of why they're here, if they came here without going through customs.
Yep.
Just that act of enforcing the laws on the books has met with such violent resistance from the elites on the left that it is now leading to common people on the left acting out inappropriately, like the shooting today.
Yep.
I believe as more is revealed, this was not an elite. This is a lone actor, but very influenced by the rhetoric and the leadership of the left that universally oppose any type of enforcement of immigration, even if 70% of Americans agree. And it's common sense. You can't have a country without just enforcing the laws on your books.
Right.
We welcome you if you come here the right way. And this is Trump has said we know this is going to hurt your feelings and there's going to be some pushback. This is the right thing to do. He's got Tom Homan in there. He's got the right person to do it. But we're now seeing that they're being so successful. The resistance is now becoming violent, right?
Yeah.
Which means
I mean,
we're doing something right, but it's inappropriate and dark implication for America.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, it's gotten to the point where, I mean, if how many times has Gavin Newsom referred to ICE as like Gestapo? You know what I mean? Like, and here's the thing, right? I can't stop Gavin Newsom from saying stupid stuff. I can't. But what we can do is we can stop voting for idiots like that. Right? Like we can't stop them from saying dumb things, but we can stop giving them political office, right? We don't have to give guys like that political, because that all that does is sow discontent. And it's not just discontent. He's literally trying to acquire this exact situation. Like he's literally trying to make people go out and be violent. Now he's not saying it, but like if you call somebody a Nazi, that's what you're doing. You are sanctioning anything against them, anything, because that's what we did to Nazis. We fought them. We killed them. That's what we do to Nazis, right? Everybody knows this. And people don't even know what a Nazi is anymore. They don't even know what fascist means anymore, but they do know that. They know that that's what we do to them, right? And so we've got to get to the point where you're not, as a politician, like we can't stop you from saying dumb things, but you need to be able to self-regulate, guys. Like have a little bit of common sense, have just a little bit of composure, a little bit of self-control, please. Like as a politician, we put you in office. Please show that you're adult enough to manage that seat for just a few days, And if not, if they show us that they can't, we need to stop voting for them. We really do. Now, I know California's probably a lost cause, but let's try. Let's try to get.
I will say that any politician that cannot universally condemn someone shooting at a government facility to kill government officers, or somebody who's speaking there, like Charlie Kirk speaking there, is creating a culture where they want fear. They want people to be afraid to say ideas, to express ideas that they don't agree with, contrary ideas, right? And we in common mansplaining, we're not super brave. We're just common guys. We're not elites. But we want to recognize that they want to have a chilling effect. They want people to be afraid. They want people to be quiet when they're at universities and to hide their ideology. And we will see the silent majority. They will come out and vote. And we want your vote, to when that happens. But we need this this violence will bring out, will not have the effect they want. It won't chill us. People are showing they're going to be more brave. They're not going to be silenced or intimidated by this violence. But we need the leadership on the opposition to condemn this universally as inappropriate.
Yeah, right. Like, I mean, them not being able to condemn that in that little House resolution, like, unbelievable. Like, it's like 50 of them or something. Like, how did so many people?
That will go down in history. Like, you couldn't condemn an extra legal assassination. What is wrong with you?
Yeah,
what
like
is wrong with you?
And guys, look, I realize, that you might be like really partisan. I realize that you might be like, completely in the corner of your own team, but find a better person in your team. If that's the kind of person if that's the kind of person you put in office and they're saying they can't condemn political violence, find somebody else, please. Just
find
please.
Someone else.
Like, please. But anyway, guys, you were great. Sorry, it was a little bit low energy today. Both Christian and I a little bit under the weather. Now, heads up. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Heads up, I will be gone probably for at least a week as of from this point. At least a week. So I'll miss at least the next 2, maybe 3, depending on how smooth this move is. I'm moving to a different state, so there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of moving parts. Thank you so much for watching. But and I'll definitely try to stay in touch with you guys on the community posts, and we'll play it by ear. But thanks so much, and we'll catch you next time on Common Mansplaining.
Keep it coming.
Keep it coming.